It's so bad. They're so needlessly destructive in this space.
Yeah.
It's like they've got such a cool sandbox, but they don't want anyone to play in it.
Welcome back to the channel. I got a fun one for you today. We're going to be kicking off a brand new Tau army, having a chat with the creators behind the minis, and bringing it all to life on a brand new 3D printer. So usually when starting a new army, a combat patrol box is a pretty good idea. But what if you could manufacture your next army yourself with all the technological prowess of the great and powerful Tau Empire? You'd probably use something like this. Introducing the HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex. Now, full disclosure, HeyGears have paid me to use and feature their new Reflex 3D printer for this video, so please do think of this one strictly as an advertisement and not a review. And with that, please allow me to tell you about this brand spanking new 3D printing ecosystem, and we'll have a chat with the creators behind the minis soon to learn a little bit more about what it takes to create tabletop miniatures. The HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex is a fine-tuned printing ecosystem designed to take the frustrations out of resin 3D printing so you can enjoy a hassle-free printing experience with great results. But who are HeyGears? That name was new to me too, but as it turns out, HeyGears have been an industry leader in the resin 3D printing world for nearly a decade now. We hobbyists have just never heard of them because up until this point, they've been servicing exclusively industries like dental and prosthetics. The researchers and developers at HeyGears have a wealth of experience building intelligent, automated and robust 3D printing solutions for these big industries, but now they're bringing that knowledge and expertise to the consumer market with the UltraCraft Reflex. Something about this machine's futuristic and angular looks just screamed Tau to me. So for this video, I wanted to see if we could kickstart a fishfolk army using this new equipment to really put it through its paces and test its mettle as a hobbyist resin 3D printer. Now there is no way I can delve into this faction and not print some models from the legendary Piper makes. So to start this army off, I chose the formidable Anglergeist and the stealthy ghost shrimp mechs. The perfect opportunity to have a play with HeyGears PAT10 transparent resin. So when I was trying to figure out the best way to get in touch with you, I stumbled upon your YouTube channel. And this absolutely blew my mind because you're doing all of your design stuff, all your modeling in Fusion 360.
Yeah, no, everything's CAD. The modeling is CAD, the rendering is CAD. It's all done in the same program.
That is insane. How did that happen? Did you like try Blender and just think, nah, this is too easy. I want to create on hard mode.
No, I've been doing CAD since I was a freshman in high school, and I actually branched out from CAD into Blender for a little bit, but I like modeling with tolerances and whatnot, and you can't really do that in Blender. Like all of my models have set gap tolerances between all of the pieces, so everything will fit together once it's printed, and I can't maintain that in Blender. Not to say I haven't used Blender, but it's not the same.
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually had that exact problem in Blender recently. I don't know if you saw it. I did this chainsword video where I like modified a creator, Cornivius. I took one of his like miniature chainsword files and blew it up in Blender and then cut it up into pieces. And yeah, doing the tolerances in Blender, like making sure that there's like enough gap between the parts so they all fit together, it was a bloody nightmare.
Yeah, no, it's I can't even. I've seen people who do like hard surface modeling and like ZBrush and whatnot, and still somehow manage to maintain some semblance of tolerance, and it just blows me away.
So in Fusion, do you take advantage of like the parametric stuff where you can like change a parameter and it updates everything, sort of thing, or?
No, I model everything off the cuff. When I started, I did stuff that was more like parametrically guided. Like Fusion gives you the option to set up a kind of like a timeline. But as designs go and progress and more time elapses, they get more complicated. So little things that you forget about in the beginning start like quite literally crashing Fusion.
Oh, right. I was gonna ask.
It's like a butterfly effect a little bit. So I don't personally model anything parametrically. It's all kind of free form, I guess.
Do you find it challenging sometimes when you do try and do an operation and Fusion tries to crunch the math on it or whatever, and then for whatever reason it's like, nope, that's an impossible move.
Yeah, no, very occasionally I will get an error in Fusion where it will tell me that I have expressly created illegal geometry.
Oh, illegal.
Yeah, I know. I don't really know what triggers it. So both yes and no. I've been using Fusion for as long as it's been a program, and I kind of like, I've got workarounds and stuff. Like if Fusion won't do one thing, I've got usually about 2 or 3 other ways I can go about getting it to do the thing. But sometimes it's exasperating. And I've had a couple streams where at the end of it, it wasn't chamfering in Edge, and for whatever reason I couldn't get it to do it. And I think ultimately I had to give up. And chamfering is doing like a hard edge versus fillet, which is like a rounding. And I think I ended up ultimately having to fillet that edge, which I don't like doing because I don't like filleting edges.
It's one of those things, I suppose, where like at the scale you're working, it's just a guess, but like when that final part is printed, it's probably like such a small chamfer or such a small fillet, you probably don't even notice it anyway. Is that right?
No, yeah, no, 100%. So nearing the end of my modeling, like a part, I'll go through and I'll chamfer out all the outward edges and whatnot to what is ultimately a minuscule degree, but at the end of the day, it renders significantly better than if you were to just leave it with a hard edge, because it doesn't look natural.
Yeah, that makes sense.
While you're supporting those little flat surfaces, like if you need to put a support smack on like a corner, that little tiny flat spot provides a point where you could put a support that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
Yeah, because if it was just a hard edge, it would be like in 3D, it's like an infinitely sharp hard edge, almost.
Exactly. And slicers don't know really what to do with those.
Yeah, slicers don't know what to do with a lot of things.
That's not wrong.
Yeah. The UltraCraft Reflex, in addition to being built like an absolute tank, boasts some impressive features to ensure successful prints, like automatic vat heating, resin runout detection and auto feeding, a self-leveling build plate, and it even does a little dance at the start of each print to make sure your resin is all nice and mixed up. Printing miniatures isn't always straightforward, so the Reflex has been jam-packed with as much machine spirit as possible. AI algorithms like light uniformity calibration, multi-layer exposure analysis compensation, and those aforementioned automated features means the Reflex is your one-stop production platform, giving you commercial-grade results while being easy to use. HeyGears have given us a really innovative wash solution here that's like nothing else we've seen yet. You just take this tub, stack it on top of the other, release the valve at the bottom, and all of the wash fluid drains right into the second tub. This minimizes mess and exposure to toxic chemicals. Just be absolutely sure when you release that valve that the bottom tub's valve isn't also open.
No! Oh, fucking shit! I had this one set to on as well. No!
That's the kind of mistake you only make once. And hopefully, having seen me do it, you don't make it too. To cure the parts, simply place them on the large removable turntable inside the curing machine, specify your time, and hit go. I made another mistake here and assumed that the default settings of 30 minutes was what was needed, but these parts yellowed like crazy, so lesson learned. I just printed them off again and gave them a cure of 5 minutes this time, after which they turned out perfect. I later learned that both the wash and cure stations have Wi-Fi connectivity, which allows you to specify from the HeyGears cloud slicer called Blueprint exactly which material you will be post-processing, and it sets the cycles to their optimal duration on a per-print basis. I'll talk more about the Blueprint slicer later on. You have a very distinct style. Like when I see a Pipermix render or miniature online, I instantly know where it came from. How did you cultivate that? Where does that come from?
So aesthetically, I pull from a bunch of different like mech sources. I've done like inspiration off of like Ghost in the Shell is a big one. a couple various different Gundam, Zoids, in some cases just Pinterest, just like kind of trolling their mech tag and seeing if anything sticks out. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, aesthetically, I try to make something that I like. And at this point, the aesthetic that I've managed to kind of cultivate is like this culmination of just various different styles that I kind of enjoy.
How did you what made you go into 3D printed miniatures specifically? Like, it sounds like you were already doing Fusion 360, but what was the deciding factor that made you just go, I need to do miniatures? Like, that is cool.
Do you mind if I take a sec to try and figure out how to word this? Because it's a little bit...
Please, go right ahead.
So I've got to just kind of sit myself down again for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically, there were a handful of miniature companies out there that I particularly enjoyed. But like, some of them didn't have the bits that I wanted, or we're going down a more monopose route, and I do enjoy modularity. And I looked at some of these things and I was just kind of like, I could probably do that better. And I tried my hand at a couple different aesthetic styles, and kind of eventually worked my way into what I'm doing now. And it's all like, every kit I try to do some variants of modularity and pieces and whatnot, and customizability, which is just kind of something you don't really see too much kicking around anymore.
I did notice that when I built your stealth suits. I made 3 of those guys, and forgive me, I'm not going to remember the names off the top of my head, like what the actual model names are, but
no worries.
The 3 stealth suits, and then the big guy. Hang on, let me get the files up.
No worries. Is it the ones like specifically from this month?
I'm actually not sure. I got it on Comics, Games, and Things. Fusion Geist.
Gotcha. Anglergeist?
Anglergeist, yeah, Anglergeist. That's it.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
I'm looking at the.
All right, I'm gonna. So hold on, I'm gonna DM you an image that real quick.
Okay.
So because the Anglergeist, it's quite, at this point, it's quite old.
Well, I've found it to be pretty easy to figure out where everything goes, and I was a little concerned going into it about like how challenging it might be to actually pose the thing, just because there's like so many joints and whatever. But I didn't find it too bad. It was a pretty fun little modeling challenge, and I appreciated the amount of flexibility there was in the kit as well.
Okay, I just shot you some images on Discord.
Oh wow.
So that's the one I just did, which is kind of like an aesthetic evolution of that initial model.
Oh, it's awesome.
Like I was saying, the Anglergeist is I think I made that back in, oh shoot, God, that had to have been in 2021.
Okay, so a couple of years ago.
So you can so aesthetically, it's like a two-year gap.
Yeah, wow.
It's between the two. There are like little detail cues and whatnot, and aesthetic cues from the original Geist in it, but I kind of wanted to bring it in line. And originally, this was just going to be me kind of revamping the shoulder joints because I changed up the joints like halfway through, and I've been kind of going back and slowly updating the older kits to kind of either have like the newer joint or whatnot. But I opened the file in Fusion and I was like, nah, just throw the whole thing in the bin. We're starting over.
Oh, so this was a complete redesign from the ground up.
Yeah, no, this one was a complete complete resculpt wouldn't really be quite right, because I did pull a lot of influence from the original Geist, but it might as well. It is what I would consider a new model by comparison to the original, and it's got what is, in my opinion, some of the best additional pieces. And I get this a lot. If you look at the bit spread in the bottom right, there are a handful of pre-posed held arms.
Oh,
because
yes.
I'm sure if you did the held pose with the original Geist, you probably found it to be quite a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that was my least favorite bit.
It's pretty much everyone's least favorite bit. You're not alone.
I used don't know what gun it is. The ion one, I think. And
it's better looking than the Fusion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
On that particular model.
Yeah, I thought it was the better
But that
looking
one,
gun.
that one flies a lot closer.
Right. Okay. Oh yeah. That's more risky territory. A gun. But I noticed when I printed it out that it didn't have a hand attached to the forward handle thing, if that makes sense. And so I like just printed off a bunch of different hands to see which one would sort of work best with it. And it kind of, for my particular one, it kind of looks like he doesn't have a good grip on the on the front handle. But
yeah,
it's not a big deal. It still looks pretty cool.
You said it didn't have one of the hands attached to it?
Yeah, I'll see if I can get you a picture here of exactly what I printed.
There are a handful of different versions of the weapons that had different amounts of hands attached to them.
Right, okay, because
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I looked through the files I have and I could only see like the pre-supported files. Oh, this one does have the hand. Okay, no, I just missed this completely. Yeah, I'm an idiot.
No, you're totally fine. These things, it only kind of gets worse from here because it's all bits. It's all bits.
Yeah.
I try to make things as straightforward or not as complicated as I can, but it's tricky.
Okay, so you there was some hesitancy around talking about those early days. Now, is that because the influence was heavily from a certain organization that we shall not name, that is very popular in the tabletop gaming sphere?
So it's kind of twofold. Without I don't want to say like off record, but like off record,
okay,
it's because a lot of my early designs either were or pulled very heavily. Like I was saying, the first thing I did was remodel, and so like that's kind of tricky to talk about in general. Everything progressively after that was kind of like this set to the current aesthetic that I'm at now. But like even the initial designs immediately after are kind of already starting to interject design changes and whatnot into things. And I did arguably base them on things that were out of production, so it's kind of like it's a bit of a mixed bag.
How much of a leg up do you feel artists potentially get from, say, doing familiar sculpts? Is it necessary to their success, do you think?
So it's kind of like a bit of a double-edged sword. I think if you're trying to model in a space that already has an established aesthetic, that kind of like starting out, pulling pieces from that aesthetic, kind of trying to really emulate it for a little bit, is definitely a good starting point, especially if that's kind of what you're shooting for. If you're trying to like make original concepts in a setting that already exists, then pulling aesthetic and whatnot from that initial setting over time will eventually kind of fit more what you're trying to do in that aesthetic. I don't necessarily think it's something that you would have to do, but it kind of depends on how confident you are with like source material, concepting, and whatnot. It's definitely an easier way to start than if you were to just wing things without like kind of a solid concept you're trying to adhere to. Yeah. I feel like that might have been a little word salady.
No, it makes sense because it's honestly it's the same thing with doing YouTube videos. You know, it's like the big crowd, the fans of that universe, that IP. If you sort of don't cater to that, then you don't get the results.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's in this particular space, it's definitely a thing that you see a lot. But it's like, as another off record aside,
okay,
as a company sucks for this.
Oh yeah.
It's so bad. They're so needlessly destructive in this space.
Yeah.
It's like they've got such a cool sandbox, but they don't want anyone to play in it. And it's
That's
just
a beautiful
such a
way to put it.
it's exactly that. It's like this company has such a big sandbox. They don't want anyone to play in it. And it's like it just kind of sucks for like artists who are trying to stay in that kind of realm of things, because it is a cool setting. It is fun to play in. And it's like you could make something completely new in that setting and still like get bullied by them. It's just it's frustrating.
That is the saddest thing to me. Like when, yeah, someone clearly has made something that's, you know, inspired by, it's thematically similar or whatever, but it's clearly different too. Like it's original, it's their own thing. And then, yeah, for Big Bad to come and like slap them on the wrist and say, hey, enough of that. Delete that
Don't
from
do
the internet,
that,
please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so sad.
It's just frustrating. And I don't know, it's just kind of like a direction that I've seen them kind of work into over the past 10 years. It's not cool.
Have you personally ever had to cop any shit from them doing what you've been doing?
No, knock on wood. I have managed to do pretty well in kind of keeping them off of my back. It's like, sure, I've got a couple aesthetic cues and whatnot that kind of tie back to them, but like panel lines, you can't really enforce panel lines and stuff like that. Mech in general as like a playground is a lot more at the end of the day, there's so much stuff that you could pull from it that it's like there are so many cooler things out there.
So was it challenging or was it nerve-wracking? Were you concerned when you moved away from more familiar design language into your own unique thing? Were you worried that would they come with you on this journey? And
would they take this journey with me? Yeah, no, and honestly, it's more so a fear now than it has been prior. I've kind of managed to cultivate this aesthetic over the course of like 3 years now at this point. So the people who have been here since the beginning have kind of like followed along with that aesthetic evolution, and then the people that it's bringing on now are, in my opinion, some of the cooler things, because they're seeing this aesthetics, this divergence, this aesthetic difference, and they're kind of like, wow, that's still really cool. Yeah. I would like to print that. And it's like I get messages a lot that I don't really answer in like my Patreon like inbox and whatnot, where a person will be like, this is really cool, I just wanted to tell you that it's really cool. Or my personal favorite is I've had people message me that they got a printer specifically for printing these models, and that
that's awesome.
Blows me away. But to kind of go back to the original question, yes, all the time. Even more so now, with kind of me branching into the next faction after the one that I'm doing after this one wraps up currently, which it will in about 6 days.
Now, what's a Tau army without drones? There are plenty of drone builders out there, but for this video, it couldn't be any other than the talented Mike from Hivemind Miniatures. I've been a fan of Mike's work for a good while now, and have printed and painted up a couple of his absolutely stellar Tiburon tanks in the past. And he offers multiple different drone builders to cover every possible configuration you could ever need. So I decided to print up 1 or 2 drones from each set. Mike was keen to have a chat for the video too, but unfortunately we just couldn't get our schedules to line up. So instead I figured I'd take the time here to quickly talk about the paint scheme I've gone for with this burgeoning Tau force for anyone who wants to replicate it. Given these minis need flight stands, I opted to keep using the transparent resin for now, and rather than brushing on the primer like I had with the Ghost Shrimp, I just used masking tape here to cover those up and gave them a quick prime through the airbrush. By now you guys know I'm a big fan of the slap chop painting technique, but to mix it up a bit here, I tried hitting these minis from underneath with Moody Mauve before laying down Maize Yellow all over. These black base layers seems to skew the yellow towards green, but this wasn't too much a problem for me when picking out details with Murder Scene later on. I really love the way this comes out over the yellow, and I think these two shades ultimately complement one another really well. Keeping it simple, all I did was finish up with some quick edge highlighting of the yellow panels using pale sand, followed by painting over any lenses in white before finally colouring them with magic blue. To base everything, I used Geek Gaming Scenic's Arid Grasslands Base Ready Mix. The HeyGears resin bottles act like cartridges that are inserted into the back of the machine, and they have a clever valve built into this dual cap design which allows you to invert the bottle without fear of spilling its contents everywhere. Importantly though, you can, if you want to, completely remove the cap to allow for easy refilling of the bottle. The printer uses 2 levers either side of the build plate to lock it firmly in place, and removing the vat to empty it out is as simple as removing the current resin bottle, but not too quickly, whoops. Let it drip for a moment first, then all you gotta do is release the 2 latches and the vat will lift straight out. The vat has a nice wide protruding spout too, which makes short work of a large pour. HeyGears also have this really clever multicolour resin system they're calling UltraPrint Design, CMYK, which lets you mix up just about any colour you want while maintaining consistent resin properties for predictable and successful printing. The set comes with the 5 base colours and all the accessories you need, including a digital scale, mixing cups and stirring rods. For my Tao's next and final installment of Greater Good Soldiers, however, I decided to give the PAU-10 grey modelling resin a go. And for the models themselves, after a little bit of research, I discovered a creator by the name of Riverside Minis who had exactly what I needed. How did you get started in modelling?
It was kind of something that I did, I guess, on and off over the years as a kind of a hobby, you know, never really seriously. I kind of got into 3D printing then and gradually just got a bit more serious about it, you know what I mean? I kind of done 3D modeling for just sort of video game type projects and stuff, but I think when it was basically when I got the 3D printer, I was like, you know, just gradually got a bit more serious about it, you know what I mean?
You mentioned you got your start in video game, like 3D modeling.
Yeah, again, not like as a job or anything, just sort of as a hobby. That was kind of my introduction to 3D modeling. So I you know, make kind of game characters and stuff or whatever. But yeah, it was just kind of, I think, maybe over COVID at some point. I kind of gradually just got more into it and started to take it a bit more seriously and just got a lot better at it, you know?
Yeah, awesome. And what software do you use?
So I use 3ds Max as kind of my basic software. It's really just because that's what I know. If I was starting again, I'd probably go with Blender. Although there are some really nice things in Max, like the modifier stack and so on. For actually, I think I've moved away from using Max to actually make stuff really. I mostly use it for, you know, assembly, but you know, ZBrush, and there's a new solid modeling program that came out this year called Plasticity.
I've seen
it's like
that.
an indie I think it's fantastic. I love it. So I'm basically using that for all my hard surface stuff now, and then ZBrush for the other stuff.
Fantastic. You mentioned 3ds Max.
Yeah.
I don't think I've spoken to anyone yet who uses that. What's the go with that?
You know, it works kind of, you know. Well, I mean, it is pretty powerful. It's kind of a clanking, hissing, decades old piece of crap in some ways, but it's also really powerful. You know, the Arnold render is there, and that's good. Just I think the best thing about it, if I had to say one thing made it really good, it would be the modifier stack, which, you know, you don't really see in much other 3D software, unfortunately. So there's a kind of a you know, non-destructive modifier stack, and you can kind of build stuff up that way, and it makes it very easy to kind of go back and change things. Also, it has a great remesher now as well. I think that came out a couple of years ago, yeah, it has a built-in remesher that's very good, and especially if you're doing solid modeling or stuff like that, where you're really going to need it. You know what I mean? And it handles hard surfaces pretty well. Yeah, the scripting language, MaxScript, is pretty cursed, but it does work, you know.
Okay.
So
wow, so it's super hardcore. Like it's got its own programming that you can do inside of it.
yeah, I think it's kind of like their own mad version of JavaScript. So
Yeah,
it's
right.
just curse on top of curse. No, but I think it's you know, it's very old, very badly documented. I think you can use Python with it. I must look into that. Not that you know, I mostly just use scripts for export and stuff like that. It's not like I'm doing any mad amount of scripting in it. But yeah, I think you know, Blender's much better there. I think that uses Python and probably has a proper implementation.
You mentioned modifier stack. I have some vague idea of what that is, but I might be wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong. But in Blender, you have non-destructive modifiers you can add, like you can do booleans and stuff, and then you can apply them and make it permanent. But is that the same sort of thing, or is it something else?
It is the same sort of thing, but there's a much sort of broader array of them. You know what I mean? So there's modifiers for kind of this and that. There is a lot of them, and it's reasonably performant most of the time as well. So it's, you know, it's not like it slows it down.
Oh, cool. And remeshing, that's where, say I had like a bunch of different shells that were like intersecting one another. Is that where you take you take all those individual shells and you sort of find out where they all intersect and remove the stuff that's...
Well, it does it kind of basically reconstructs the mesh completely. So let's say you have you know, you make something in plasticity or SolidWorks or something, the topology that you're going to get out of that is going to be very bad. Now for 3D printing, you can actually get away with like a ton more than any other kind of 3D modeling, because, you know, the topology might be bad, but if it describes the shit, you know what I mean, it'll slice, it'll print, it's fine.
I have found that.
Yeah.
but there's also, it's weird. Like I think it's very heavily slicer dependent, but I think some slicers do handle these kind of 3D problems. Some of them freak out a little more than others, or a little more regularly than others over it. But generally, I know what you mean. You can send something pretty horrific to a 3D printer and probably have success.
yeah, most of the time at least. But remeshing is basically just it recreates the mesh based on that. So it kind of gives you something with nice topology. It's extremely useful for sort of video game stuff and that. But I remesh everything anyway, just to be on the safe side.
Roughly, how long does it take you to go from when you very first start a design to when you have a fully complete kit ready for release? Yeah,
well, I mean, it sort of varies in size, obviously, depending on the kit. Like it could be a squad inside of 2 weeks sometimes, but sometimes more, sometimes less. The thing is, like, for something like the strike team, it's kind of a big time sink in that when there's lots of fabric, especially in the legs, like basically every, you know, once the basic models are made and posed, you kind of have to create new sculpts then for each of the legs and each of the arms, etc. And I've kind of been getting faster at that, but it's still very time consuming. So it can vary wildly, but I would say median time 2 weeks. And that as well, like that's if I'm kind of just focusing on that. Like sometimes I'll have a few things going at the same time, and obviously they'll take a bit longer then.
The next thing I wanted to ask you, or rather the next sort of direction I wanted to take this, your models look a lot like some other models I've seen somewhere. Not identical, but definitely, you know, pretty reminiscent, I'd say. Do you worry that having them featured on a video like this puts you in the firing line from a certain miniatures company?
I think there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to what they do in that regard. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? They're like a massive $1 billion company. They could have people like scouring cults all day if they wanted to. I think they're, if anything, is making them a bit reticent. It's you know, they don't want another chapter house scenario on their hands. with 3D printing, but I don't even know. Like, I just kind of have to not worry about it really, because the thing is, nobody really knows what their criteria or method is, so trying to anticipate it or avoid it is just kind of pointless. And honestly, I haven't had anything taken down, which I'm kind of shocked at in all this time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, well, if it happens, it happens, whatever.
You use original names, don't you? You don't have like identical names.
I don't use. I think that's maybe one big reason why I haven't gotten DMCA'd yet, is that I don't use any original names. I think I use I'll call the weapons what they are, but I don't think they're heavily copyrightable anyway. You know what I mean? Plasma gun isn't exactly a Warhammer exclusive.
Yeah, or like rail rifle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Given a lot of people are really into that particular game and sci-fi universe, do you think it makes it easier to have success in this marketplace by closely mimicking those designs?
Very much so. I think it's not necessarily the design itself as the context that they're in, which is the valuable thing. It's sort of the models being within that. I think are what kind of creates the audience for them.
And what do you think about doing more original stuff, but still in the same sort of vein? Artists?
I mean that's definitely something I kind of want to move towards. Not even just because it's less greasy, but it's a bit derivative, obviously, working so closely. Though to be honest, I find like in terms of trying to learn how to model, it's almost more difficult to copy something than to create something original, because if you're working on something original, you can kind of use techniques that and just not put things in the design that are sort of outside your grasp at the moment. Whereas when you're trying to work from an existing design, you kind of have to figure out how to do everything in it. You know what I mean? So yeah. I found that was a good thing for learning. But after a certain point, it is a bit kind of derivative. And yeah, I definitely like to move towards legally distinct work.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have concerns around moving towards more original and legally distinct designs? Like, do you worry that will the audience, the fan base you're building now, will they come with you on this journey into original Riverside Minis?
I guess it kind of depends. It doesn't have to be a binary thing. It can be just basically gradually increasing the percentage of work that's original over time. It doesn't have to be like I'm gonna stop doing what I'm doing and do something completely different overnight. But I guess when the work doesn't have a built-in audience like that, it can be a lot more difficult. But definitely, probably more rewarding as well. So worth at least attempting. It's impossible to really guess, or outside of a very specific context, like whether something's going to sell or not, or how it's going to do. But there's a lot of fans. People are very nice to me on Discord and stuff. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, I guess it depends. Hopefully they'll be good enough to keep and draw an audience in that direction.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I don't see why not. Your sculpts are really fantastic. You can tell. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it was a joy to print them and put them together and paint them. I'll send you some photos after this. Actually, I've did a whole squad.
I love seeing photos. I love, especially out in the wild and the internet and stuff. Seems something.
It's trippy. Hey, like when you design something in 3D and then you see someone else somewhere else in the world print it, and because I did a couple of models myself about a year ago. I tried my hand at learning Blender, and I did just a couple little terrain pieces. I wasn't very good at it, but seeing people print them, it's like, wow, look at that.
It is exciting. It's almost collaborative in that sense, in that there's people spending hours with them after you've made them, making their own thing out of them, which is one thing I love about it as well.
Are you planning to do other factions?
I'm definitely planning on doing other stuff as well. I'm kind of, there's a few more Tau suits to do, but my big thing with the Tau was that I really wanted to redo both the strike team and the Pathfinders. You know what I mean? Because I think that they were one of the first things I ever did. And then, over time, I kind of got to a higher level, and they were still the most popular things. Like, God, I have to go back and fix those. But there's a few Tau suits I want to do as well. But yeah, I definitely want to get be a bit broader. I also like to make just kind of random sci-fi miniatures, almost RPG stuff. I kind of feel in my bones that the commercial prospects for that is like zero, but I still want to do it a bit.
It depends. I mean, there's a couple of guys that come to mind for me. There's Papsicles, I think is how you say it, and what's the other one? Unit 9. Both those guys, as long as I've been into 3D printing, have been around, and they do not do like 40k stuff at all. They're just doing like random sci-fi, cyberpunk, dystopian, whatever. And those guys have been killing it for a while. But a lot of that, I think, is probably just what would you call it? Like first mover advantage, because they have been here since this thing kind of blew up. Would you say it's harder now to break into this scene of STL 3D printable miniatures?
I mean, there's no really barrier to getting started is one thing. So I mean, like that's always kind of stayed the same. You can just make an account on Cults and do whatever. I suppose the markets get saturated, and there's kind of an equilibrium point where there's a bunch of very skilled people or people who've been doing it a long time. I don't know. It can be harder to maybe make money right out of the gate, but there's nothing to stop you just doing it. You know what I mean?
So it's kind of, I guess it's a lot like YouTube. It's it's very saturated, but if you just show up and you just do the best you can,
that's really all you can do. Anyway,
then you can hopefully have some results over time. The glue that holds all these HeyGears products together and makes them work is their intelligent blueprint slicer. Blueprint is a cloud-based slicing solution that connects to and controls all of your HeyGears products remotely. And HeyGears have sought to take all the guesswork and technical expertise typically associated with this style of home manufacturing and turn it into a hassle-free, easy-to-use, point-and-click experience. Blueprint Slicer has the ability to analyze your 3D models, determine their optimal print orientation, and automatically place supports. Preparing a print is as simple as choosing the profile for the resin that you're using, slicing, and then sending to the printer. No need to fuss over calibrating your settings, as this is all taken care of for you by HeyGears. This is one of the big benefits to a closed 3D printing ecosystem like this. Yes, that means you cannot change any settings or use third-party resins, but that is really beside the point here. If you're buying these products, you're buying them because you don't want to ever have to touch settings in the first place, and you want something where everything is just taken care of for you. So big thank you to HeyGears for sending me over their new products and for sponsoring this video. Please do check out the HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex at the link below for more information. And of course, huge thank you to Piper Makes and Riverside Minis for joining me to chat about modeling and 3D printing. I had a blast chatting with you both, and here's where you can find more from them.
Oh man, call out the socials. I'm Piper from Piper Makes. I run a Patreon over at Piper Makes. I mean, usually it's pretty easy to find. You just gotta Google.
Well, you can find it on Cults. If you search Great or Good, you'll find me. There is one thing. I'm working on a piece of software that I'm releasing in the next week or so, which lets you take any image and project it onto a shoulder pad. It's like a displacement thing. It's called Signifex. It'll be out next week. I'll post around about it, but that should be interesting.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all again real soon.